Tariffs are in and America is starting to rebuild. Today we are talking about 3 companies that are set to benefit from the rebuild in America. Today we are actually in MarketWise headquarters with CEO David Eifrig. David, I know a lot of people call you Doc.
Yes.
Yes, we will talk to you as Doc for this.
Anything you want to call me is fine.
Perfect. I'm excited about this conversation today because we've been in such a bull market recently, but this is a little bit more of, I don't know, I want to say a contrary approach, but a cautious approach to the market.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating to me is with the new president versus, say, when he was in office back in 2017, he visited Ames Steel in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the time. And this is just, 8 years ago, 85% of wheelbarrows were made in the United States. And since then, there are no wheelbarrows made in the United States. That factory closed up, gone, done, 240,000 square feet of space gone, employees fired, let go, stuff was moved offshore. And so I think when President Trump came back in, he's seen this need to, both for security purposes, that can be obvious, we might or might not get into that stuff, but trying to sort of bring back control of certain businesses that are probably going to be in the future critical for security in the United States.
I know we've been talking about tariffs in the market so much this year, and we've seen the impacts it's had on the market too. I know bringing back some of that manufacturing to the U.S. has been key, especially in AI. A lot of the chip makers have been some of the biggest parts of those discussions. Are we starting to see that impact in the U.S. economy yet?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, let me back up a minute and say that in classic sort of economics, it's not clear that we should be doing it other than for security reasons, because the models sort of say that if we specialize, you create efficiencies in economy. So if you think about a global economy, it's much more efficient for us to make, say, X manufacturer for $3 an hour with labor in China or Japan or whatever, versus here in the United States you have to pay $30. And it's more efficient for the global world. But if the global world is going to fight or going to shoot missiles and kill other people, and you need to protect yourself, it doesn't make sense to have all that stuff. I was shocked in doing a little research for this for us today. China does 32% of global manufacturing. The United States is only 15%. As number 2, Japan is 6.5%, Germany 4%. And imports of things like lithium batteries, smartphones, laptops, about 1/3 of those come from China. And so if we're fighting with China, that's a problem with China, you got to either slap tariffs on it to at least bring some revenue in while you try to move this stuff internally. So that's happening. And the question like Taiwan Semi-Manufacturing Company, I think they said they're going to put in $100 billion in the next 4 years for U.S. chip manufacturing. So that's big. IBM, I think, is $150 billion devoted to U.S. chip manufacturing. So it's changing very, very quickly, and it's government-sponsored, government-encouraged, and anyone who invests, you'd be foolish not to follow where the government is pushing rules, regulations, and benefits. Like, that's just an obvious thing when you're an investor. So you got to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Hyundai is, I think, building a steel manufacturing plant in addition to the stuff for their cars in Louisiana. So, yeah, all these companies are doing that, yeah.
Yeah, not only is there regulation and government's kind of pushing there, there's money going to there.
Yes.
There's so much investment to build all of these plants and things.
Yep, real hard money. Kimberly-Clark, which I think of as a Wisconsin base, up cutting the trees and making the paper mill for toilet paper. I mean, they do a lot of their stuff offshore. They're coming back in, I think $2 billion over the next 2 years for moving stuff back into the U.S., and that's big for them. It's happening very, very quickly and deliberately, and states will and have been, bidding for that stuff too, and say, come to our state and don't pay taxes for this on the next 10 years and stuff. So, yeah.
It's going to move the economy for sure, and I'm excited to get into the list you have for us today. You have 3 stocks for us today that are going to benefit from this move to rebuild manufacturing in America. Before we get to your list, I do want to give our viewers a chance to look at more of your research. Go ahead and scan the QR code now or click the link that's right in the description of this video. If you want to take a much deeper dive into the research that Doc and his team here at MarketWise have really done about the developing seen changes in American manufacturing, how it might impact the dollar, the US economy. It's a really fascinating report. You don't want to miss it. So go ahead, again, scan that QR code or click the link to get that report right now. All right, Doc, let's move on to your list that you have for our viewers today. These 3 stocks, we can start with the first company on your list.
Yeah, so at the risk of alienating the listeners and watchers, I want to just add one more thing, because I'm called Doc because I actually did go to medical school after I worked for Goldman Sachs. So I like to say I'm an overeducated derelict. But one of the things people don't realize, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but what percent do you think of medicines in the United States are not made in the United States? What would you guess that would be?
No idea.
90%.
Are not made in the U.S.?
Are not made in the United States. 90% of all medicines taken are imported. I think Tylenol, ibuprofen, 2 common pain relievers, I think China produces 50, 60% of those. So it's pervasive in kind of all industries, not just manufacturing, but medicine, healthcare. So the importance of that and thinking about that, I think, is just people should know that.
That's such a great talking point to remember that's why we're seeing this rebuilding coming to the U.S.
Yep.
Well, let's get into that first company on your list, which is one that could really benefit from rebuilding America's manufacturing.
Yeah, I think one that we like on my team is Lincoln Electric, and the ticker on that is LECO. And the reason for that is they're involved, really the leaders in both the United States and the globe in welding. And if you think about it, if all these people are going to be building plants and steel plants, you got to put it together, and you have to do it in size. So it's not just a local carpenter in northwest Iowa and Esterville. These are big jobs. And so that kind of scale, you need companies that can organize and do that. And Lincoln Electric is a long-time, very profitable purveyor of those things. So,
and if we are seeing all these new plants coming into the U.S., they would logically get a nice little boost from that. Yep. But I'm curious, there's a lot of welders out there. There are those smaller companies. What makes this company stand out from some of the other welders in this field?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're Hyundai, or let's take IBM. You want to do $150 billion into the United States in chip or Taiwan semi-manufacturing. You're going to probably have to put those in a couple different states. You're probably not going to want to spend time coordinating. It's a question of, let's say you're going to redo your house, rebuild it from top to bottom. Do you want to be the general contractor, or do you want to hire a general contractor? Think about them as a general contractor. So locally, I'm sure that they would involve smaller businesses around them, but they're the ones who are going to coordinate all of that process for you as well. So that's why you can't imagine, and you don't want to pay bills to 70 different people. You just want to send it to Lincoln Electric and let them take care of it. So that's one of the main reasons for them.
Well, have we seen any movement in this stock yet or recently?
Yeah, no, you've seen movement in the stock, and I think we can show a chart for folks to see where they are and read the report to learn where it should go and when and what level to buy under and stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to share that in the report. Yeah.
Okay.
The next one I would say, we had written about it, and I had never noticed it on television. But if you watch sports on Sunday football or Thursday night or Sunday, Monday night, there's a company that shows up, and there's usually a strong-looking buff guy, and it's W.W. Grainger. And I was like, wait a second, that's a company we just recommended. And what they do is they're distributors of and suppliers. So you can imagine if you're going to be welding, you're going to need equipment, you're going to need canisters, you're going to need bolts and pieces and parts on time delivered, and Grainger is sort of a consolidator of all that. It's like a hardware store for large, big projects. So Grainger, we think, will play a role in that flow and that process as well.
And this is interesting. It's a company name that we've not talked about on the channel before, but I'm assuming this company's been around for a while.
Yeah, it depends on how you define quite a while, but like the wheelbarrow company, for example, I talked about in the opening, they forged steel tools for George Washington's army, so that's a long time. Grainger, 1927, founded in Lake Forest, Illinois, where my dad happened to be born, so almost 100 years. So it's been around. I think that's a while.
Do we tend to see stocks that are 100-year-old companies get that nice bigger resurgence? Would you call it a growth stock? Or is this more of a slow and steady kind of growth to look at for investors?
I feel like companies such as this, especially if they're well managed, they last a longer time until eventually, in my opinion, private equity gets involved. So that's what happened with the Ames company. Private equity comes in and thinks they can do it better. Maybe in that case, it could have been, I don't know, but it can be a 7th generation of family members or stockholders that say they want out and PE thinks they can come in and fix it. They leverage the business and run it into the ground. So this is not a PE business. And it's, it's just kind of a steady eddy. You need hardware stores or a version of that. You can imagine your local Ace. Maybe you're more of a Home Depot or Lowe's person. But Home Depot and Lowe's, I don't think is going to go away, or if not, it'll be a consolidated one, and there'll be airdrop shipped with drones when you want your hangers for the pictures in your house, perhaps. So another one, this whole theme again of the infrastructure that Trump talked about years ago, and I think Biden's groups are paid a little bit of lip service to it, but they perpetuated some of this stuff. But it's been necessary for a long time, and people maintenance and picking it up. But the electrical grid, right? You probably heard. You've seen in Texas when the weather is bad, you get the power stuff shuts down, the grid freezing. It happens all over, and this company, Hubbell, and the ticker there is HUBB. Hubbell is one that involves essentially utility products, and they have done sort of what PE can't do, which is they're serial acquirers of small companies. So they're putting together, you can imagine, up in northern Minnesota, there's a small Mille Lacs Lake Electric. And so Hubbell is putting together these small businesses that run and manage the grid and then creating efficiencies for the grid. But that's something, electrical and utility product business. The numbers we talked about, large blocks, that's going to happen locally and federally, again, for security reasons. You've heard about all of the storage and AI and these large plants that need cooling and need electricity. Well, guess what? This is going to be part of that future. So I like Hubbell.
That's an interesting one in the conversation because it feels like more of a traditional electric company. We've talked about nuclear power and all of these different, small nuclear reactors and different batteries and the importance of those with the data centers that you're talking about.
Yes.
I think this is an important one to bring up. It's not like the traditional electric companies are going away anytime soon.
Right. No, if anything, it's a growth business. I'm somebody who learned about and thought about utility as more of a fixed income security, steady, paid high dividend. When money got cheap in the last 15 years and still relatively inexpensive, you think that the PE ratio being high on utilities would eventually come down if interest rates go up. In fact, they've almost turned into a growth industry now because of this, the data centers and AI. So yeah, it's fascinating.
So much demand in this area. I think we're going to see a lot of growth.
Yep.
I really like these names. Again, they're different than what we normally talk about on the channel. So like to see this different look at the market. I know these are the kinds of names and the kind of information that you'll be sharing at a conference coming up in Vegas.
Yes.
In just a few weeks. I will be there.
Oh, great.
You and your team from MarketWise will be there too.
Yep.
Tell us what else we can expect at this conference for those of our viewers who might want to join us.
Well, if they want to join in person, kind of a fun thing is every year, I have a small winery in Northern California that's sort of my evening job. We do a wine tasting that's very serious and gotten more expensive to come and sit in and do this and get my latest releases. So that'll happen one night. That's a fun thing I look forward to. But we've got speakers, like last year we had Michael Lewis and we had Billy Beane, if you know that world. He wrote Moneyball, and Billy Beane was the guy who was the manager of Moneyball. And Michael Lewis, think of the books he's written, Blind Side. A couple of years ago, we had Lance Armstrong that I had the fortune to sit up front. I hated him when I started researching him, and then researching him, discovered, the mind of man. We cheat all of the time to get the edge. And if you look at all of the drug samples for over 12 years of the Tour de France, I don't know what you think of Lance, but I hated him before I researched it. But it turns out of 120, 132 drug samples, there are only 3 guys that didn't test positive when we could test for that 10 years later. And so everyone was cheating. That was the moray of racing at the Tour de France. And so it's easy for us to be holier than thou, say, oh, he's a cheater. But kind of like if everyone's cheating and that's the game. Same thing happens in Formula One racing, NASCAR, and anyway, I'm not a proponent of cheating. I'm just saying you've got to know who you're talking to and with. So we just have a whole boatload of interesting, fascinating speakers. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it this year.
I'm really excited too. It's my first time there, but clearly there's a lot of interesting speakers. You'll learn so much more about the economy, about what's going on in the market right now, and of course come away with a lot more stock ideas too. So scan the QR code now or click the link in the description if you want to join me and Doc and more of the MarketWise team in person in Vegas. There's also an option to join virtually if you can't make it all the way out to Vegas. place, but you don't want to miss Doc's wine tasting. So you definitely want to come in person.
There's only a couple seats left, so.
Awesome, Doc. Thank you so much for your time today and for this interesting discussion and stock names too. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Bridget. I appreciate having me.
Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you looking into this whole rebuild story in America? Are there some other manufacturing names, construction names that you're interested in right now too? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and as always, happy investing.